Hello, welcome back. Matt Osborne from MrLeica.com. Today's video is the Leica Q2 and I'll do some comparisons to the Leica Q camera and then also include photos of a shootout Leica Q2 versus the Leica Q so you can see if there's any difference in image quality. So firstly, let's look at the price. A new Leica Q2 camera will cost you £4,500 and there don't seem to be that many used Leica Q2s currently available, but I found one where the auction had ended and the used price was £3,600. Just to put that into context in terms of what money can buy you, if you're looking for a digital Leica camera, you can get the original Leica Q for around £2,100 a used price. You can get a Leica CL for around £1,500 a used. A Leica SL body for £1,850 or Leica M10 for £4,150. So now if we look at the Leica Q versus the Leica Q2, the Leica Q was released in June 2015 and has a 24.2 megapixel sensor. And then if you compare that to Leica Q2, that was released in March 2019 and it has a 47.3 megapixel sensor. So pretty much double the megapixels. Both cameras have the full frame CMOS sensor. Now if we look how the Leica Q2 differs from the Leica Q, the original Leica Q weighed 640 grams, but the new Leica Q2 weighs 718 grams. I think that's partly due to the larger battery size. The ISO of both cameras is pretty similar, but the base ISO of the Q2 is now ISO 50 rather than ISO 100. The Leica Q camera system, whether it's the Q or the Q2, offer in-camera cropping. So the Leica Q, you could have the full frame, which was the 28mm view from the 28mm lens, or you could then crop in to have a 35mm view or a 50mm view. And what that basically did was crop into your total number of megapixels, which you would have on your 28mm full crop. The crop only affects your JPEG images. So if you shoot RAW like I do, when you export your images, you'll see the full 28mm view on all your photos, regardless of whether you were using a 35mm crop or a 50mm crop in camera. Where the Q2 differs is it now offers a 75mm crop as well. So you can kind of crop in even tighter. A big benefit of the Leica Q2 over the Leica Q is because it has twice as many megapixels, you can really crop in quite a lot without losing too much image quality. So it makes it a much more kind of usable feature than I think the original version of the Q. One weakness of the original Q camera was the lowish battery capacity, and it was said to give around 250 shots per battery charge. Now the new Leica Q2 has a larger battery, and in return it gives you 370 photos per battery charge, obviously approximately. Now there are many small improvements in most areas of the camera, and one other one that I'll mention is the Leica Q2 is weather sealed, whereas the Leica Q wasn't weather sealed. They call it kind of splash proof, dust proof, so it's not supposed to be taken out into torrential rain, but it should survive kind of moderate adverse conditions for those wishing to risk it. So those are some of the major differences between the Q and the Q2. Now, there are also some features which haven't changed and are the same on both the Q and the Q2. Notably, one thing that hasn't changed is the amazing lens. The Leica Summilux 28mm f1.7, a spherical lens, obviously fixed lens design camera. This is the same lens on the Q and the Q2, and this is quite a special lens because it offers you macro mode, it offers you autofocus, and it has a built-in leaf shutter, meaning you can sync your flash at a much higher flash sync speed. That's not something I've had the chance to test, so I may have to revisit this in a future video, being someone who likes playing around with flash. So a few more similarities. Both cameras have the 3-inch LCD touchscreen. Both cameras have the OLED EVF, although there are slight improvements to the Leica Q2 EVF as I understand it, kind of reduced lag, things like that. And then both cameras offer aperture priority mode and shoot at around 10 frames per second. So cosmetically, how does the Leica Q2 compare to the Leica Q? Now there are a few small adjustments. So from the front, the Leica Q and the Leica Q2 look fairly similar. But if you look from the top of the camera, the Leica Q2 now has kind of a cleaner look to it, and it seems to have taken some common features from the Leica CL camera. As I own the Leica CL, I can show you, as I have it here. So unlike the Leica Q, where the dial buttons only rotate, and that's one function, on the Leica CL and the Leica Q2, These buttons are dual function. You can rotate them like so, like a normal dial, but then you can also press the middles. And the new dial on the top of the Leica Q2 is a dual function kind of button slash dial, the same as the CL. And to me, it's a very similar design in terms of minimal amount of extra writing. And compared to the Leica Q, you no longer see the off, the S and the continuous mode written on the top. That's now hidden within the menus. And equally, the video record button that was on the top is now also in the menus. I think Leica realised that people that use Leica cameras don't shoot video, so why would you need to have a record button? Kind of easy access. That's my thinking anyway. And then finally, if we look at the back of the Leica Q versus the Leica Q2, you can see for the Leica Q it used to have 5 mini buttons on the left hand side of the camera, whereas the Leica Q2 has now only got 3. And again, Leica have followed the design of the Leica CL. So here's my Leica CL camera. You can see the same 3 button display, the EVF and the diopter. One slight change to the Q2 is the diopter. You have to, it's kind of flush against the back of the camera, so you push it and it pops out and you can adjust your vision, then pop the diopter back in. So it's quite a nice design. Okay, so that was a very quick overview of the cost of the Leica Q2 compared to the Leica Q, the basic features of the Leica Q2 compared to the Leica Q, and how the two cameras look visually compared to each other. It is only to give a kind of a basic understanding, and there are much more detailed reviews on YouTube and online if you want to go through every single minute detail of every single change. For me personally, the important factor was how did the images look, the Q2 versus the Q. So if you saw the first video on the Leica Q camera, you'll know that I did a photo shoot with Astrid, a London-based model. If you want to check her on Instagram, I'll put a link to it in the description below. So firstly, here are a series of images shot with the Leica Q camera. In terms of settings, I was using the lens wide open at f1.7. I was shooting in RAW mode, and then I just applied my black and white preset in Lightroom after. Shot at ISO 200 in full manual mode, and all the photos were shot with ambient light, kind of daylight in the street. And now to compare, here are photos taken with the Leica Q2 camera. I must mention a special thanks to Leica UK, the Leica Mayfair store, for letting me use both the Leica Q and the Leica Q2 to allow me to make these videos, and for me personally to kind of understand what both cameras would offer me. All the photos you see here are shot literally just outside the door of the Leica Mayfair store on the street with daylight, and again shot in RAW and then converted to black and white in Lightroom before exporting. So those are the images. Could you tell a difference between the Leica Q and the Leica Q2? I'd say personally, from using both cameras, the Leica Q2 images on the back of the camera LCD really did kind of jump out at me a lot more than the Leica Q photos. Probably the fact that it's got twice as many megapixels. All the photos I showed you are original cropped, so 28mm, and so it'd be interesting to see if you can tell the difference between the Q and the Q2, because often additional megapixels is only really useful if you're going to either crop in heavily onto your image or blow up your photos huge to go kind of billboard size. I appreciate it. It's probably quite difficult to compare technically the Leica Q photos versus the Leica Q2 photos via a YouTube video. I'll upload all the images that I shared in this video onto the MrLeica.com blog, hopefully in the next few days, and then I'll put a link to that below this video. So then you'll be able to see them side by side without having to kind of pause the video. Sorry for the big delay between the Leica Q review and then this Leica Q2 review. I had planned to release them reasonably close together, but I realised for the Leica Q2 I hadn't recorded any B-roll footage. So my plan was to go back to London, which is around 2 hours away by train from where I live, shoot some B-roll footage of the Leica Q2, include it into this video, and then share it with you guys. So I took another trip to London. I worked with the guys at Leica Mayfair store again. Another full day of photo shoots and cameras and the usual craziness. And then I got home and I realised that I still hadn't got any Leica Q2 footage. So it's like, so I apologise that there's actually no kind of video visuals of what the Q2 looks like, but you'll be able to see this on other videos. And for me, it was only really supposed to be a quick demonstration of how the images looked from the Leica Q2 camera versus the Leica Q. I guess to counter that, the good news is I have been testing more Leica digital cameras kind of current models, and so I'll have more reviews and more example pictures to come. My aim is to kind of create one YouTube channel where it doesn't matter which digital Leica camera or Leica lens you are looking at. If you want to see example pictures which are comparable to photos taken with a similar Leica camera, if you come to this channel, then hopefully I'll be able to provide that. Now, I have already done videos for the older Leica M8, the Leica M9, the Leica M240, the Leica CL, and all of those videos were kind of more in depth and had a larger variety of photos from many different occasions. And then more recently I've done the Leica SL, the Leica SL2, the Leica Q, and now today the Leica Q2. And all those videos have got a similar format, so hopefully the photos will be comparable. Any camera that I've not yet mentioned is hopefully in the pipeline. So that's it for today. Please let me know in the comments, which photo did you prefer, the Leica Q or Leica Q2? Did you see a difference? If you're not yet subscribed, feel free to hit the subscribe button. And if you want to see all the other content that I'm producing, which is on the separate Patreon channel, feel free to check out the Patreon teaser video to get an idea of what I'm getting up to outside of YouTube. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons for their support. Very much appreciated. Back soon with another video. Bye.